Welcome back to episode 234 of the Tall Boy Radio podcast. And for those of you who enjoy your politics, and for those of you who don't, it is the election special. So we are going live on election night before any results or any polls are available. So what's the point? Well, we can discuss it and we can find out a little bit about our opinions and what the news is telling us and how it might go. This is the live version on the video. Of course, the audio version will be available in actually about 3 weeks' time. So I'll do two starts. First of all, can't believe the Tories going, what are you boys thinking vote for the Tories? That's absolutely ridiculous. You should be ashamed of yourself. And then on the likelihood that Labour get in, who voted for Labour, you fucking idiots? Who did that? That's even worse.
And on the extremely unlikely event that the Reform UK get in, we're all moving abroad.
Yeah, 3 weeks' time, the country will be fucked anyway, so we won't be out there. Guys, how are you doing, dude?
Thought me out there as I'm just swinging a beer. Yeah, no more good kid. In a strange sort of way, looking forward to this. I know we did a politics one not that long ago, really, but and you know we spoke about sort of what our thoughts and feelings and beliefs and all that were. But no, strangely looking forward to this. Although whether or not we actually get an indication of what's likely to happen, sort of as the country votes, is highly unlikely. But we'll wait and see.
Indeed. But we might get an indication. We might get an indication of how Dave has voted.
You might do. Might not. I'm decided. I'm still on the fence. I think I'm not really have voted. We should probably introduce some results as we go through this. Just make some up, just to liven up a bit.
Yeah.
No way. No, they haven't won that seat. No way.
Well, I did on the off chance that we were end up going to do what we actually planned on doing just through the night. I have created our own swingometer or Farageometer, which we may use a little bit later. But Dave makes a very good point actually, because the polls are open until 10 o'clock tonight.
Yeah,
you know. So if you're watching this, first of all, if you're not voted, what you're wasting your time watching this nonsense for? Go and vote. Do something useful as part of the democratic process. But if you're still unsure, we can maybe make up a few people's minds with our intellect and our informed gaff and nonsense. Is that not the case?
Might be, but I think are we allowed to actually do that? I don't think you're actually allowed to do that.
Well, we're not campaigning. Well, I'm not that. I'd say I'm not that partisan.
I was going to say, I'm not campaigning and I'm not that partisan. Yeah. Oh, God, ladies and gents, so just look at that for a minute.
Yeah. For those of you listening on audio, Adam's wearing a T-shirt, and we do swearing on this, but I don't particularly like. But it says FUCK, the Tories, in rather large letters. So I don't know if you could figure out Adam certainly isn't voting for. But yeah, it's pretty partisan in that way.
Yeah, we can't campaign on behalf of on behalf of any of the parties. This is my understanding. I forget how it works. We did do this at politics at A-levels. I'm sure you can. We can't discuss it within so many meters of a polling station. I know that much, dude. But I'm not campaigning for you to vote for anybody. I don't care who you vote for. It's just one particular party. I would just rather you didn't. That's my.
But isn't it? Yeah, you can't convince or influence people, but you are allowed to express an opinion. So 100%. if you express an opinion and they just happen to be in close proximity to you expressing that opinion, if that then impacts them and they change their mind, you're theoretically not doing anything wrong, are you?
God help you if you do listen to Tall Boy Radio and your mind is changed politically. You know, really, really question your life.
I'm glad you added politically there, because God help you if you listen to Turbo Radio. No, well, that's what we want. Yeah. We want people to listen to us. But
Indeed. So first of all, have the three of us? I know I've partaken in the democratic process today. Did first thing this morning. You guys?
Yes, I have partaken. Yes, I have. Yes.
Are you willing to share with us which way you voted, or it is a private matter, so we're not required to tell people?
I will share with you that I have not voted in the way that I have previously voted for a seriously long time.
Ooh. Have you voted for Bob Mortimer?
You know what? I really thought about voting independent. I really did, and God bless you. I know you're the only one that follows Tallboy Radio, so hats off to you. And you know what? I actually went in and thought, do I just do it? And I thought, no, wait. And I didn't. Genuinely, I didn't. But yeah, we spoke about the independents and the role that the independents have, sort of thing. But no, I didn't vote the way that I have historically voted.
Interesting. Neither did I. But I will say this. I don't know about you, Dave, but I walked into the polling booth and I didn't make up my mind until I had the pen in my hand, the paper in front of me. I was undecided. Until I walked in, and that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
I was similar. Dave, go on.
Yeah, I knew who I was going to vote for, and I've made no secret on previous episodes. I voted for Conservative, and there's an awful lot I disagree with the way they run the party and some of their policies. It's just that it really is that picking the lesser of the two evils in this election for me. I'm not voting for them because I could probably endorse them as a party or their complete policies across the entire board. It really is, I think, that they're the least worst. And I've never said that before, but that's how I'm viewing it.
That's interesting. Just if Gaz and I look distracted, we had this idea that we'd put the news on in the background about just in case something happens political wise, something that we could then share with you as we go live. I should have to say, for the most part, it's been fairly miserable.
Yeah, to be fair, and without spending the next 45 minutes talking about what's on the TV, we've had child deaths in Syria, we've had hurricanes and floods in wherever it is, and now we've got Thierry Henry advertising Dove for men. So,
that's bit so.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get back to the episode.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, for myself, I went in and I voted. Now, traditionally in the past, in the last two elections, I'll be dead honest, I didn't vote Conservative. The last time I voted Lib Dems actually, and then the time before that, I voted the Green Party. And I was one of 999 people in our constituency that did. And my only reason for voting the Green Party is, if I'm really honest, green politics not really that important to me. But this was at the time of Brexit, and they were saying they were going to overturn and reverse the system. I thought that's important to me. That's what I wanted to see happen, and that's why I chose to vote for them. I didn't vote for them this time because, let's face it, Brexit's been done. The harm, if you will, has already, it's already started. I don't necessarily, I'd like to see it reversed. I don't see it realistically ever happening. In fact, I think we are where we are now, and I'm not sure they necessarily want us back. But that's another matter. So what was it that made you vote? And you obviously don't have to tell us, guys. What were the things then that influenced you? Because last time we discussed like local politics and maybe we should consider how things affect us locally. Did you consider any of those factors when you voted?
It was more, I suppose, along the lines of Dave to a certain extent. You know me, and I will say this, and it doesn't take a genius to work out who I then didn't vote for, but historically I voted Tory, and I'll be honest, I didn't vote for them this time just because almost the shit show that is the government at the moment. And I looked at a couple of things that potentially, so I work in education, my wife works in the NHS, so you look at what's going to influence us, and it's just a couple of comments that were made to me that made me think that perhaps going Tory might not be the best way, just from an employment and a tax thing. So I decided to not vote Tory. There are a couple of parties that I just dismiss straight away. I won't say who they are. You can make your own mind up. We sort of left a choice of two, I suspect, and I not at the absolute last minute, but as I was going to the polling station, I was a little bit still undecided. And similar to you, I sort of got there, and I think when I walked in and I got the ballot paper and I went to the booth, I actually genuinely thought about just writing Tallboy Radio and putting a cross next to that and spoiling my paper, but I didn't, because I thought, you know what, I actually sort of don't really agree with any party, which is a bit weird, really. A bit like Dave, I suppose, is like the lesser of it's the lesser evil almost. So I genuinely did think about spoiling my paper, but I didn't, and I voted. So I think just a couple of key things for me that would potentially influence, and I'm not saying me personally, but maybe me and Jenny, Jenny's my wife and stuff. So just a couple of things that I felt my impact, if a certain government got in, then it might mean this, and if a certain government didn't get in, it might mean this. So they were the key things really for me, is that just one or two things that I felt might influence me, on an employment and a financial and a level that would mean that I can continue to, and we can continue to do the things that we want to do.
Interesting. Now, I'll tell you who I voted, dude. I'll be open. I'll be honest. I will say who I voted for, and it's the first time I've ever voted this way, dude. And well, it was with a lot of deliberation actually that I have voted Labour this time, and that's the first time I've ever voted Labour in my life.
I know. Fucking hell, dude!
I know.
Jesus, you said you'd never vote Labour.
I did say I'd never vote Labour. I did say I'd never.
So why? So okay. So you're the guy that's normally in the hot seat and ask us loads of questions. There he is. The Farage-ometer's gone to Labour. So you're the guy that sits in the hot seat, sits in the chairman's seat, and gets to ask all the questions, and very rarely gets to answer all the questions. So
I like it that way.
Yeah, well, not for the next 5 minutes, because so what? I mean, for somebody that we both, me and Dave, sort of have known you for a significant length of time.
Used to respect you.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
And actually, you were always, and if you don't mind me saying it, or I always perceived you to always be vote Tory, for a number of years. So in the next, and I'm not putting you on the spot, although I am really. What made you vote Labour?
Two things. Fair question, dude. And I know where you're coming from. And thank you to my brother for his kind words of I no longer consider you family. Labour ? But it's nice that he ever considered me family in the first place. So that's a nice surprise on tonight's podcast.
John, just if you're listening, just
we know.
we know where it's going. I was going to ask the question, dude, but anyway, back to you.
Yeah. So two things made me vote Labour. And ultimately, I wanted to see the Tories out. I wanted to see the Tories with as fewer votes as possible, and that's one of the reasons why I voted Labour. The second is for the last 14 years of Tory politics, and I've discussed it. I'm not a fan of it, but truthfully, have I suffered under those 14 years? I probably have. I could have been in a better position, maybe under a different government. I don't know. It's impossible to say because it didn't happen. That's what we've had for the last 14 years. But I've done okay. Okay, where we are. And I can't really grumble at my own financial or economic state at this point in time. However, I'm very aware that there are a number of people out there who are struggling, who have suffered, whether that's at the hands of the Tories or economic. We can debate that till the cows come home. But I do recognise that there's a number of people out there that the Labour Party in the past has historically looked after a little bit better than the Conservatives. And I think those people probably need 4 or 5 years, maybe, Dave and I discussed it. We thought maybe 2 terms, 8, 9 years of maybe having their interests looked after a little bit more, that I could probably hopefully survive financially that period myself. And maybe these people would benefit. So I'd like to say I genuinely did do it. A, downfall of the Tories, quite nice.
Mm-hmm.
And B, just, I tried something that we never discussed last time is actually just thinking about, not just voting for ourselves and voting for what we think other people might need. And that's how I decided to vote this time.
Did you not think, and again, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. Do you not think that, and you mentioned there that some people obviously were fine, I say fine, under the Conservative government, some people weren't, and do you not think it's almost like robbing Peter to pay Paul? So if Labour in just a different demographic would be okay and other demographics would not be?
I think there's a certain demographic of Tory voters which will be okay regardless.
Do you think?
If I'm really honest, so I'm not too worried about them folks looking after themselves. There's those folks in the middle who are a little bit aspirational, will vote Tory because they see themselves wanting to achieve that, the classes that the Tories potentially are seen as always looking after. And, then there's maybe the other classes. If you believe in class, I'm not sure I really
Just
do.
sorry, just to simplify, are you suggesting that Tories are very upper class and that the Labour, let's say, are very working class? Is it that simple?
No. It isn't that simple. No, it isn't that simple. I'm simplifying it by using the word class, but no, it's not that simple. No, but yeah, I think maybe the working classes tend to be who have always been where Labour have had their vote in the past. They've probably had their best interests at heart. I wouldn't say upper classes because I think to be fair, those are the folks that do it right regardless.
Yeah, okay.
It's know the middle classes, if you will, that know, tend to vote Tory.
Okay.
Thoughts? I know. Well, not yours, John. Thank you.
I think you're right to say that it's class is. I think class is something that is less and less of a thing nowadays, and both parties openly say we stand for the workers, and they say it and they mean the same people, but they mean it differently. The Labour Party are trying to appeal to essentially the low-paid workers in large industries, effectively, where the trade unions exist or used to exist. And the Conservative Party are basically trying to say, if you want to get a job and get on in life, we're backing you. We're for the workers. And they're both trying to use the same terminology to target slightly different demographics, but essentially say everybody. I mean, class, I grew up in a council house with very working class parents. I've always been a Conservative voter. So, I certainly wasn't that way through class.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Actually, while you're on, Dave, since you voted Tory, we'll get the Farage out just for you there, pal.
There he is. There you go. A little bit of balance. It's like the yin to the yang.
Though, on Farage on that one.
He's like the yin to the yang, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Balance. We just balance things out there. We give a balance of opinion. We're like the BBC.
Are we?
Yeah, the problem with the BBC, which if you're on the right, it just says it's horrendously left wing, and if you're on the left, you just say it's horrendously right wing. That's the BBC for you.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of no. Anyway,
yeah, but we took. I mean, you sort of joke there, David, but we touched on this in the last episode, and historically there was almost a very left and a very right, whereas actually now a lot of the time it sort of morphs really, and traditionally staunch Labour left wing and staunch Tory right wing, but a lot of what happens is sort of move towards the middle of the spectrum, don't they? And so I think gone are the days where you have really traditional sort of massive swings left or right. I just think there's the odd key political hot potato, I suppose, whether it's tax or whether it's immigration or whatever it may be. And I think obviously, we talk about reform, and I think that's one of the things that their voters are sort of hung up on. So, there's really only, I would suggest, not even half a dozen, maybe 3, 4, 5 key areas that they significantly are different on. And when I say they, I mean Tory Labour, and gone are the days where, as you say, literally you're on a spectrum and Tory's this side and Labour's this side. I do genuinely think that they're much more aligned in a lot of their thinking. It's only on 3, 4, 5 key issues that they may be different.
Yeah, I think you're on the money there, dude. And that's we talked a little bit about the illusion of choice, that if everybody agrees on something and you don't have to agree with that, then absolutely you've got no real say in the matter. It doesn't matter who you vote for; it's that your views aren't going to get listened to. So, just out of interest with you two guys, then, Dave, I'm guessing you had made up your mind you were going to vote Tory regardless. I hadn't made up my mind, so I had to consider a few options. Gaz has voted otherwise. He doesn't have to share, and that's absolutely his right not to do so, and I understand given his position. But did you consider either of you voting reform out of interest?
No, not the slightest. I mean, I'm afraid I can't look past the undertones of Nigel Farage and what he stands for, and for everything he says, and for all the rhetoric, and for all his probably quite significant intellect and his way of talking. I just can't get past that. Basically, he's labelled as an out and out racist. Is he an out-and-out racist? He's certainly xenophobic. It's hard to know whether it's racist because I don't know him individually, and because he's so careful with the language he uses. I think he's definitely divisive, and he definitely stokes xenophobia and racism by the things he says and the way he talks about the way he's going to change it and the way that we should get back Britain to what it used to be like, which basically means get rid of an awful lot of foreigners. We'll stop foreigners coming to this country. And I just think it's a wholly unpleasant thing. And a handful of his either party activists, people working in the organisation, or potential candidates have basically said some pretty horrific things. And he tries to just say, it's just pub banter. It's what people talk like. And he's saying that to appeal to the people that do talk like that. And there are people out there, and there's a lot of them. But to say that it's okay because that's how everyone that supports him talks doesn't really wash. It just means they're all as bad as him.
Yeah. No, I can't argue with anything you said there, dude. I think politically we tend to disagree on that one. I can't disagree with any of that. Can you, Gazza?
No, can't disagree. I think they probably piggybacked on a hybrid of Tory, Labour positions on various different aspects of their manifesto, and I think they've just rewritten it and rewrapped it up in a way that makes it look like it's their own, but it isn't. It's just a hybrid of Tory Labour, and they've just picked a bit of this and a bit of this. And actually, I think, Dave, you're right. I think that obviously the key thing is the immigration, and we want to keep the UK, and that's their main selling point and driving point. And I can't get past, that there are significant benefits to allowing people into our country. There are significant benefits to that, and don't get me wrong, some people will say that there are significant downfalls as well, and to a certain extent, you can see where they're coming from. I personally don't agree with that, but you can see how they might perceive that. However, you look at something like the NHS, and you look at the workers in the NHS, and people say, oh well, the foreign workers in the NHS hold up the NHS. Now, people will say that UK, they're taking jobs away from people in the UK. Well, are they really? Really? And I don't see that they are, because every job would be advertised. Every job, so everybody has an equal opportunity. In my opinion, everybody has an equal opportunity. And I just think that if you limit your shores and you don't allow people in, you limit your skill set. And all of a sudden, you're not providing the best opportunities for whether it's care, whether it's education, whether it's housing, whatever it may be. You're just not providing the best opportunity by restricting your borders. And for me, I think that's obviously the key thing. That's their key selling point, I suppose, as a Reform UK. And the rest of it is just a bit fluffy and a bit woolly and a bit like bit of a mishmash between all the other parties, I suppose.
No, I know what you're saying, and we're not saying that there isn't an argument for controlled immigration, and that's not what Gaz is saying.
No, absolutely not. No,
that absolutely has to be some level of control on it. We understand that. Although next episode that we do, we will be looking at controlled immigration in terms of we speak to someone who has who left our fair shores and chose to go to much stormier waters in terms of the Biden and Trump rows that they have over there. Now, I will also say this as well. Me and Gaz have got Sky News on the background. They've gone all out on their graphics. They've done a little bit better than our Farageometers. So
well, you say that,
but they haven't got the rhetoric that we have. God bless.
We've got moving graphics. They've just got numbers and colours. That's all they've got.
Absolutely. So we don't have the exit polls available yet. We understand why they aren't available till 10 o'clock, obviously, because we don't want to be influencing views. But we must have all seen yesterday the figures that we were looking at. Literally an absolute landslide Labour majority is what we are looking at, in all honesty. First of all, do you believe those figures? Do you think that is going to be reflected in what we see tomorrow morning and onwards?
I think, yes. The best I'm hoping for is a hung parliament. But I do think it's going to be significantly a Labour majority, and there are a lot of people undecided. But you take the three of us, and you two were undecided till very, today maybe. Certainly that's the case, Adam, when you made up your mind, but it sounded like pretty recently.
Yeah, today,
And you two as a case, Gaz, you didn't vote for Conservative, and you did vote for Labour. So you were two undecided people that have basically flipped away from the Conservatives.
Correct.
And if that is replicated through undecided voters, it's going to be a car crash. I mean, the only thing you can hope for once they get a massive majority is that when you look at the numbers and you look at the number that the people that vote for Labour compared to 2019 or 2017, if they don't go up, as in the number of people that vote, then there's a bit of saving grace that it's more likely to be a short-term thing, 1 term, maybe 2. But if the number of people that actually vote for Labour, so not the percentage, the number of actual people goes up significantly, then that's a real mandate, and you've got to take it on the chin, and you've got to just cross your fingers and hope.
Do you think, Dave, that and whether it's a backlash of the previous Tory governments, do you think there's any Labour voters or historically Labour voters that are likely to flip and not vote Labour this time, as opposed to, as you said, potentially myself and Adam, who historically have been Tory voters that now potentially would flip? Because my perception is that because the perception that the Tories have done shit over the last X number of years, if you always voted Labour and you felt as though you were in the minority, actually you probably haven't got any reason to change that view. So if you were once Labour, you will always be Labour. Whereas I suppose there are times where Tory voters or historically Tory voters will flip. I don't know what your thoughts are, Dave. Do you think that, what I suppose what I'm trying to say is that if you're a Labour voter, do you think there's as many Labour voters flipping as opposed to Tory voters flipping?
No. I think if you go back to not the 2017, what was the one before that, 2013, something like that. The people that were voting Labour then, that generally always voted Labour, they're definitely going to be voting Labour this time, even if they don't particularly like Keir Starmer, they don't like the look of the front bench, the shadow cabinet, they don't think he's got a great lot of character or policies that he's definitely wedded to, and he keeps flip-flopping around. Even if they have all of those concerns, they're definitely going to vote Labour. And then you've got the 2017 lot, all the ones that voted for Corbyn, which weren't very many, which is why they didn't do very well. But they're probably going to go back to Labour. Then in the 2019, you've got all of the red wall that converted from Labour to Conservative and gave Boris the big landslide. Those ones, I would imagine, on the whole, are going to go back to Labour because they were in Labour before, and they probably won't have seen enough change locally to make them think that Conservative have done a good job for them at a local level, which is why they flipped in the first place. So essentially, anyone that's voted Labour at any point in the last ever is going to vote Labour. I would say the vast majority of them. And then Conservative are just going to lose voters to Reform. Ed Davey can do his circus tricks all he likes. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And he's trying to be Boris, but without the intellect or the charisma. And to me, he's just making a laughing stock of himself. I mean, you've got to have a modicum of seriousness if you want to be a leader of what should be a main party in Parliament. But to me, he's just coming across as a complete buffoon. I mean, like Boris did, but without the intellect and the character and the following.
So do you think then that, and I suppose in a way I use, maybe not Ad, who said he hasn't voted, but do you think if you had Tory voters that potentially have flipped this time, do you think then that there's a likelihood that within the next 3 or 4 years and the next one that they might flip back? Or do you think we are in it for like 2 terms and effectively that's how the government will run, and effectively 4 years is a bit too short to notice a difference? So do you think if Labour do get in, which is obviously every poll is suggesting that they do you think we have that for the next 8 years?
I think we will, because I think the economy globally and in this country is on the turn. It definitely is, because Brexit has happened, and whether it did big damage short term, long term, we don't really know. But basically, the major consequences of that are done and dusted. COVID, the war in Russia, and the prices, they may come back in the winter, but generally things are going to be much better. So the economy is going to grow, and Labour are going to ride the wave of that. And they're going to say this is all us, when actually it's probably just circumstance, largely like inflation coming down. And Conservatives got a lot of stick that you didn't do anything for inflation to come down. Well, no, they didn't do much, but what they did is choose policies that didn't do stuff that would have kept it up. But I think the Labour are going to ride that wave 2 to 3 years, and they'll get through the next election. And then it's the term after, when you start to see public sector pay going up, you start to see more control centrally, you start to see them nationalising railways and start to talk about nationalising other things. They stop North Sea gas, oil. They probably get brave enough to try and push their green agenda, which is going to be too quick, and it's going to cause too much short-term damage. And all of those big things that sort of underpin the things they do say they're going to do and underpin their general socialist outlook will start to kick in. So towards 8-9 years from now, I think that's probably when the country are going to look in and seeing what they've got themselves in for.
Yeah, I think the way that I'm going to steal an analogy that B Word used on the episode that he guested on a couple of weeks ago. This is more Joe Flacco and the Ravens than Tom Brady at the Patriots. You know what I mean? You're going to see maybe
it means nothing to me. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, Gaz gets the analogy, don't you, dude?
I 100% get the analogy.
Yeah, it's a one-time thing. I see this more, a lot less as a vote for Labour and people saying, I think Keir Starmer's the guy, as let's bloody the nose of the Tories. I think that's more of it. Then,
so what about you then? So you've said that. So did you haven't voted Tory this time, and you've nailed your colours to the mast and said that you are Labour this time? Does that mean that you would likely flip in 3 or 4 years' time at the next one? Or is it a case of I voted Labour, so actually I'm going to give him a second term just to see, and then it's almost like in the third term? Or where are you at?
Oh, listen, I'll be a Labour hater in 4 years' time. Don't you worry about that. Captain Negative on the politics front here. But no, in all honesty, if they do a good job, then yeah, I would vote for them again. Okay, but realistically, my expectation ain't that. You know what I mean? And like I say, and this is the thing that we understood from doing politics and economics at A level. And yes, we are those annoying students. We were the young ones. The economy tends to go in peaks and troughs, and you get voted out at the point where you're in a trough and you get the blame for everything. But when it's coming back up and it's the peak, then the guys who've come in tend to get credit for stuff that they deserve. One thing I will just say though about inflation that Dave mentioned there is inflation isn't coming down. The rate of increases, it's still at 2%. It's still gone up. The prices are still ridiculously high towards that period that we've just had over the last 4 or 5 years. And, we can debate the reasons for that till the cows come home. But, inflation is still a challenge for people. Yes, it is. What we need to see is almost like a deflation. Never going to happen. Let's be realistic.
No, it's not going to happen. No.
But I don't know. I think we need to suck it and see. The Labour Party that we've got in front of us now. Cannot abide Keir Starmer.
But you voted for him.
But I didn't vote for him. I voted for whoever's the candidate in here. And as Pete Lee's. I had a chat with Pete this morning, who guested on the podcast a while ago, and he said she seems like a lovely lady. So I thought that's good enough for me, Pete. I'll vote for her. But then he also did use his fabulous quote where he quoted George Galloway to me this morning when he talked about Keir Starmer. I think he was talking about Boris Johnson at the time when he described him as two cheeks as to the same arsehole. You know what I mean? And it is that's the way I view him. That's the machinations of it. So,
but do you not think and you said that in 4 years' time you're definitely not going to vote Labour just because and so
I might. But
is it not? And I'm again, nobody really knows, but is it not better the devil you know than you not know? And I know that people are clamoring for change, and they feel and there's that swell of opinion that the Tories have. Excuse my French. Well, don't excuse my French. I can't be asked for it, but fucked it up over the last however many years and stuff. So we need a change and we need to see this and we need to see that, and everybody wants that change. And yeah, I get it that the staunch Labour guys who voted Labour, they're like, "Ooh, yeah, great." You're like traditionally Tory, like you said, the last couple of years you haven't voted Tory. Is it not on a personal level for you actually better the devil you know than you don't know? Because do you know you're going to be better off or worse off? Or
No, I understand what you're saying, and it is a valid question. It is absolutely a valid question. But in terms of the Tories, no. I mean, they literally have been the devil for the last 14 years in my eyes. And I do think we need to consider whether Labour will bring a new proposition. I suspect not. I think to be honest, I think the whole system's...
So if you suspect not, why they're not just...
Because I know I don't want the Tories. I don't want the Tories. I want to see something different. I want to see, and this is interesting actually, because Dave and I spoke about this after the episode that we recorded Tuesday, and when we were talking about this, that last time we did have a bit of a bicker about things, but I make no apologies for that, because if you're passionate about it, then that's great. You need to debate these things with passion sometimes. But one of the things that we spoke about in terms of, we grew up understanding about socialism that it was a negative, bad thing. But when you break it down, ignore the policies, ignore the government, ignore the Labour Party. Socialism in itself about caring for people and actually wanting everybody to be well and to do fine, rather than rewarding some people at other people's expense, which is almost a little bit about what capitalism makes its roots in. What we wanted to see really was a capitalist society where people can do well and can benefit from hard work and everything that they can reap the seeds that they sow. We want to see that, but at the same time, there needs to be some kind of social aspect to it where there's care for people, that we're looking after those in our society and bringing them along on the journey with us. So it's almost finding the best parts of socialism, combining it with capitalism, and maybe, just maybe, given the fact that the Tories are going, in all likelihood, and Labour isn't the Labour that they once were, maybe that's what we'll see, a capitalist society where we are bringing along, we're caring for those people, that an immigrant can come to this country and be given a fair crack at living here and staying here because they have something to offer. Or the people who've struggled, who can't work for whatever reason, are given a life which is, they can constructively enjoy themselves and give back in another way. I'm a little bit of a rose-tinted spectacles kind of a chap here, I know, and it's not going to pan out that way, and it's all going to be down the shitter by 2027. But let's give it a...
I think there's if I wanted to try and have my rose-tinted glasses on about the Labour Party, they have, I do think that Keir Starmer is trying as best as he can to be honest and decent in the way he conducts himself, as best as he can. It's very difficult in frontline politics to do that. I think he is trying. When he gets into power, and when he gets, at the moment, all the Labour Party are just towing the line and behaving themselves. As soon as he gets into power, where people can start to say what they want again, he's going to start and have to deal with factions within his own party, and he's going to face those challenges. But he's got the unions, and was it the Unite Party that wouldn't back his manifesto? And I think that's you could almost think that was by design, because a Labour Party saying Unite won't back us is actually winning over voters who think they can't trust the Labour Party because they're in the pockets of the unions. So it's almost like it's deliberate that they've had that ploy to win some votes. But when Labour are back in power, if that's a genuine thing, and they can keep the unions over a bit of distance and actually tell the unions, you know what, we do like your money, thank you very much, but actually you have got to try and modernize and push reform ahead. Oh God, that's the wrong word.
Oh, that's a bad word. Change. Don't use reform.
I don't want to use change either. That's a bit of a slogan. The trade unions have got to look to modernize the industry.
There you go. That's a better word.
I got that. Modernize the industries they're in, rather than first and foremost going for job protection and salaries. And if the Labour Party genuinely want to get them to modernize and actually work with businesses, and Labour Party genuinely do want to support businesses and encourage growth with all the right sort of tax regime and structures, then there could be hope, because I think they realise that they've got to, if they want to grow the economy, they've got to bring business along. They can't tie everything to the unions. And if they break free, they could actually make some headway.
Just a question that not baffles me, but I'm yet to sort of find the answer, I suppose. You look across to the West, and you look in America, and you look at, well, it's just big business and it's corporate business and it's the NRA and all of this. And do you think there's an element of that in UK politics in terms of it's not just a political party, it's your big businesses? And if that's the case, which side of the fence do you feel as though they lie? Because in America, it seems that obviously you've got Republican and Democrat, and it's all like, well, it's not necessarily just the political parties; it's all of the big businesses and the big and I'm trying to think of the word, your big national associations and stuff that fund it and help to support it. Is that the case in UK politics? And I suppose it isn't. Don't get me wrong; you get contributors and all of that, but I don't suspect that there's a swell of, is it the City of London that supports Labour, or the City of London that supports Tory, or whatever it may be. I don't get that impression, but surely there has to be some influence from corporate business, big business on these political parties. I mean, Dave, you obviously might know more of this than myself and Ad.
Yes. The lobbying is part of our political system. In terms of big business, there's actually not that many what you would consider big businesses in the UK. I think there's something like, in terms of the private sector, 130 businesses that employ more than 10,000 people. So in terms of large, big business, in terms of employers, there's not that many.
Right.
But there's industries, and of course the main industries are alcohol, gambling, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, and petroleum. I think they're probably
banking as well.
And banking. So they're kind of the big ones that all have a vested interest in steering policy.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times they may be lobbying because it's good for them, which is good for the country. But I suspect more often than not, particularly with some of those industries, they're lobbying so that the policies are steered in a way that's favourable to them.
Yeah.
Nobody wants petrol prices. Nobody wants petrol cars to go. The petroleum companies don't want petrol cars to go because they sell a lot of petrol. The people that make tobacco don't want smoking to be outlawed because they make a lot of money.
Yeah,
Gambling the same. All the bankers the same. They want regulation that allows them to do, the hedge funds where they're actually betting on the rise and fall of stock markets and the success and failure of businesses, and because they make a lot of money. It adds no real value to anything other than making people that do it a lot of money, and it's all hidden and it's all done by computers and nobody really understands it, but it exists and they lobby to prevent it. So to answer your question, yes, there's an awful lot that goes on that does steer, and I suspect has a direct result on policy.
Yeah,
interesting. It is interesting. Yeah, when you look over to the States, I'd like to think the politics is a little bit different here. Like Dave says, with lobbying there is a degree of business and and funding, and where parties, the different donations that they receive. There's definitely an element of it, but it's a very different animal to the States. And when we get Steve on next week, we're going to have a chat to him about a British person living in America's take on politics. I think that's going to be quite interesting because we've all got our opinions on Trump. We've all got our opinions on Biden. And, I know our American listeners will probably be much more bought into those ideas than perhaps we are. But I'd like to hear Steve's take on his perception as a Brit abroad, as it were, living in the States, and just getting his opinion on the two guys and how he sees their political systems work. But when we look at the political machinations of it, my issue with British politics is as much in terms of the way it works and the almost like that illusion of choices I've mentioned a couple of times over the last episodes that we've done. So when you look at the percentage of the vote and where those seats are likely to come, so the Tories likely to win around about 102 seats. Labour, an estimated 431, which is massive.
Yeah.
But when you look at the percentage of the vote now, okay, Tories 22% of the vote, Labour 39%.
Yeah.
So our first past the post system, by the way, guys, Sky News tells us 58 minutes to vote.
58 minutes. 58 minutes.
Go do it if you haven't already. So yeah, in terms of like the first past the post system, is that a bit outdated in terms of the way we vote? Do we want to see some kind of proportional representation that the Lib Dems have been banging on about for years?
It's a very, very difficult one. At one level, absolutely. If the number of votes cast for the number of parties was proportional to the number of MPs in Parliament, that sounds like democracy at its best, because you're truly having voices that are reflecting the portion of the country that voted for them. I think the problem comes is then trying to govern a country. Historically, with the left and the right, the policies are so far apart. I just don't think that it would ever work.
Yeah,
I think coming back to what I was saying a short while ago, my rose-tinted glasses, if the Labour Party are actually changing to understand a bit more that we need capitalism and free markets and that kind of thing. I almost said freedom of movement, and I didn't mean that. But if they understand those things, they're going to be moving towards more of a conservative economic outlook. And in that case, there's more chance that if you had proportional representation, that the general interests are going to be more aligned. But you're always going to have, the benefit system and this left and right view of benefits, and ultimately it's a very, very small number of people that abuse the benefit system, but it's blown out of proportion that people do abuse it. And if you're on the right wing of politics, you think it's disgraceful, take the money off them, they should get out to work, the lazy feckers. If you're on the left wing of politics, you think everyone should be supported. The people that are wealthier should give more to support the left ones. Everyone gives an opportunity, let's give them all a hug. And the truth sort of lies somewhere in between. But I don't think if you have these views, I think it's very hard to come to the in between. So in short, yes, in terms of perfect democracy, I think it would be good. Could we function as a country with a parliament that's split like that? I think at the moment, no. 20, 30 years time, I think maybe.
I was just going to say, in a way, you just answered the question I was about to ask, and you've said no, not yet at the moment. Do you ever see a situation, or do you ever see a time where that could happen? And I think you just said maybe 20, 30 years. What would make you be confident that in 20 or 30 years' time that would happen? What needs to happen in the interim? And I'm not asking into massive detail, but in the next 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, what do you think needs to happen in order for that to happen, and to, as you just coined there, Dave, for us to have like true democracy?
I think it's got to take both parties to move. Both parties have sort of moved in and out, fluxed in and out more towards the centre ground, which is why the Liberals don't really exist anymore. But I think the Labour Party need to move more to the right, free market, capitalism, absolutely do away with the trade union dictating to them what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
Trade unions need to reform. I've done it again. The trade unions need to modernise so that actually they're looking out for workers' rights, health and safety, and it's not all about pay. And then the Conservative Party, generally speaking, needs to move more to have more of a social agenda, where actually they don't just believe totally in trickle-down economics, which does have its place and it does work to an extent, but it doesn't work far enough. The money doesn't get down to the people that really need it, because there's an awful lot of people that want to earn their own home, want to have a job, want to work, want to do well, and for a whole bunch of reasons they can't. And not everyone can be good at school, not everyone can gain an education, not everyone can have the aptitude to get on in life and succeed. It doesn't mean that they're not hardworking, decent people.
Yeah,
and I think the right of politics on an economical and a political human side, that needs to be sharpened out, that's not really a good phrase, it needs to be taken out, and it needs to be a little bit more human focused, and the left needs to be a little bit more market and capitalism focused. And I think this opportunity now for Keir Starmer-led party is their opportunity to realise their side of that. And if they can do that, the massive shock that the Conservatives are going to get, if it's anything like those numbers you just read out, Adam, over the next 4 or 5 years and maybe 8 or 9 years, that's perhaps going to be a big kick to them to realise actually they need to go more left. And at the end of that, you're probably going to have both of those occupying the middle ground in a much better place. And then you can start to envisage proportional representation actually having a chance of working.
Interesting. I think really the Tories need to visualise just not being such buttered twats. Well, that's just my opinion. So John says our current system is broken. I would agree with that. It needs reforming. Agree with that without the use of the
without
word
capitalization. Yeah. I mean, John said that. He said our current system is broken. I mean, there's lots of elements of the system. So and you can get into the wherefores and what fors and all of that as to which bit of the system is broken. And I know that lots of people say, well, the whole fucking thing is broken, but it isn't the whole thing. There are elements of the system that are working. It's just that there are significant elements of the system that aren't working.
I know what you're saying. I do know what you're saying, but I don't think it. I personally don't think it's fit for purpose anymore. I don't think it's fit for purpose.
The Tory government.
No, the system.
The system.
Yeah, I don't think. Both is probably. Probably
looking at what you said earlier about who you voted for, probably both.
Yeah, but I just don't think the system is functional. It's outdated and it needs to be looked.
When you say the system, what do you mean though?
I just mean in terms of the way that we select people to represent us, and then those folks there. It's almost I do feel we've seen more of that they will dictate to us and we will dance to their rhythm. Whereas really we should be saying this is what we want. You go and deliver it. Now, maybe that is what Nigel Farage is selling. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt just for 1 second. Let's just, just 1 second, hear me out, folks. Let's just say that is what's on offer from Nigel. I don't believe it for 1 second. I think you're just gonna, basically placate his ego a little bit longer. But if that is what needs to be done, I don't believe for 1 second that he is the person to do it. I do believe that if we were to stamp out the Tories at this, so we stamped them out altogether, they would just reform under that banner that they're just going to be there and creating a problem, in another way. And probably the worst elements of that were that cretin who's left in charge of them, So, but when we go back to proportional representation, we talked about that. So, the Reform Party expected to get a maximum of 3 seats, but with 15% of the support. So that does,
but it's not. I mean, that's not proportional representation.
No, and that's the best argument against.
That's absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
if that's how you choose to vote, the same with the Green Party. The Green Party expected to get 2 seats this time, and the Lib Dems, they only expected to get a handful of seats, but with a level of support which isn't significantly percentage-wise that much lower than the Conservative Party. And I know what Dave says. We want to see a system that functions, that where there isn't a majority, it doesn't function. We've seen that in the past. It doesn't function when you have the Lib Labour Pact, or when we had
it doesn't work.
We had the Tory T-boy Nick Clegg, and when he was the deputy leader, it didn't work. It didn't work. So I understand the need for an outright winner. The American system is in itself flawed. Yeah.
Simple word.
Absolutely flawed. Yeah, it is. So I don't, and this is the problem. I think this is where the problem lies, is there's a number of people who will say that the system isn't working. It isn't functioning for our benefits, but there is no credible alternative, is there, realistically?
No.
Not unless you can mandate in a way that is fair and true, that, for example, 20% of MPs, so 130 MPs, have to be independents. So, like the House of Lords has a lot of independents in.
Yeah.
If you could genuinely believe that 130 MPs were independent and they didn't have a political alignment, and they really just went with their conscience and what they thought was right on any given decision, maybe that's a kind of hybrid where you can do away with big majorities, get somewhere close to having not a hung parliament, but this independent bunch of people which can keep the majority party in tow.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't see it working. I think we touched on it in the last episode where I think it was you, Dave, that said that you have lots of independence, and all of a sudden you have lots of different thinking people thinking different things, and there's no real direction, I suppose. So I take your point, and don't get me wrong, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that we should do away with independence. The
thing is, though, Gaz, it's more though. So if you said there was 100 independents, and then that leaves 550, and let's say it was 300 of Conservatives and 150 of Labour and 100 independents. So what you're saying is that the Conservatives can put forward their policies, but they can't just three-line whip them and get them through, because they have to get a whole bunch of independents to think, yes, that's the right policy for the country. And there's enough of them that they're not just, it's not just a handful that they've got to tip. There's a they've got to get almost half of the independents to side with them to get a policy through. So, it's, I don't know. I think it's just very, very difficult. And the reason it's not changed forever is because, as Adam said, hung parliaments don't tend to work. When you look at the national government in the 30s, it didn't really work. It just ground along, didn't really solve much, caused a load of trouble. And in the end, we ended up with Clement Attlee, which at the time was probably a pretty good thing. He was a pretty decent guy all round, and his policies and ideas and his social reform, NHS and him and Bevin and all that sort of stuff was really good. But I just can't see it not in the near term.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I agree. So for the Tory boys out there, what's the best thing that's going to come out of this? In all likelihood, it doesn't look like it's going to go your way. It looks like it is going to be a massive Labour majority, which obviously, you will tell us isn't a good thing. But what's the positives? What's the positives to take out of this? There must be positives to be taken.
Policies to a majority of 300 to Labour, or an absolute kick into Conservative.
The latter. Either. Whichever way you want to work it.
Okay, is there a positive? There's a positive, I guess, in that the Conservative Party, and let's bear in mind, of all their MPs, it's a relatively small number that make all the noise and cause all the trouble in terms of division and slagging each other off openly. It's quite a small number. You probably no more than 20, 25 MPs that anybody could ever look at and go, I've heard that person causing trouble. Yeah. The other 300, 400 odd, however many it is, are just probably decent people trying to do the right thing for their constituencies. So will it be enough to make them actually think, what, we've got to behave, we've got to actually act like a united party? Absolutely, you can have differences and you can talk about differences and say, I don't agree with that policy, but ultimately you've got to do it in a way that isn't slagging off and undermining and your colleagues essentially in the same party. If they can get through all of that and think, what, let's behave ourselves and all of us be decent. And if we're not, people like Suella Braverman, who's just a complete tosser as far as I can tell, the shit she comes out with just to try to undermine and destroy her own party, as well as some of her own personal views. But if we get to the point where they just get thrown out of the party because they're just destructive, like in a workplace, you wouldn't tolerate it, would you?
Yeah.
Absolutely constructive conversations, and people can even air their own views. But when it gets into setting out to destroy your own team, I just think it's bad. And if they can come out of it learning that and to not tolerate that, I think that can be a positive. It's pretty low bar, but that's a positive.
No, I in a way, I sort of agree with what you're saying, and I wonder whether or not if Labour get in with the landslide that everybody's expecting them to get in, and it is absolutely catastrophic for the Tories, it's almost like, right, well, this is rock bottom, so to coin a political slogan from a few years ago, things can only get better. It's one of those, it's like, actually, you know what, shit, we've took an absolute fucking kick in there. We really are going to have to look at ourselves, and it's not just we lost by the odd one here or there, so we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that the Tory party completely reinvent themselves, but yeah, it might be that actually, if they do get the landslide defeat that everybody's expecting, it might be that they have to really look at themselves and go, right, what is it that we do need to do? Because I think the Conservative Party will turn around and go, it's not that Labour won it, it's that we lost it. And everybody lost faith in us, as opposed to wanting to vote for Labour in their politics. It's that they lost faith in us. So therefore, if we took such a kicking, what have we done catastrophically wrong in the last X number of years? And I'm trying to spin it as a positive in terms of, right, what do we then need to do to then change that so that then Labour don't get in for a second term and we can then take it back off them in 4 years' time and then we can then form a government again. And I suppose that, in a way, is the only positive in terms of you have to be self-reflective and you have to look at yourself and go, right, what went so catastrophically wrong? We now need to change. Because I think if it was a minority or it's very close or whatever, hung or whatever it may be, there would then be a tendency for the Tories to look at themselves and go, well, actually, we didn't do too much wrong there. So we'll just sort of keep going and we'll try to convince the odd people here or there. Whereas actually, if it's so bad for them this time round, they surely have to look at themselves and the policies and the sway of opinion and the influence that they have on communities, etc., 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 that they have to look at themselves and go, well, we have to change. And is that the positive?
I think so. And the bottom line is, it can just be a one-turn thing or a two-turn thing, because when you look at the last election, and the one before, Conservatives won pretty comfortably, under a man who's got a bit of a track record of talking out of his arse, Boris Johnson. They won pretty comfortably. And it just goes to show that things can turn very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think it can turn back the other way just as quickly. So I think it's going to be a very interesting night tonight if you folks are watching. My big concern, David, pork markets. Are they going to be okay? The pork markets, the Tories looked after them, didn't they? Old Truss. She was interested in the pork markets. He's on mute.
I've no idea what you're talking about.
Pork markets. Liz Truss had a famous speech at the Tory party conference. Gee whiz.
The cat's out.
No, the cat's appears to be made of Lego. Oh no, it's not.
It's AI, surely.
It's shit AI, to be honest with you.
That was really bad, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
That was absolutely horrendous.
We got Sky News on. I apologize.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up there. Next time out, we are going to be talking to the
Keir Starmer. Oh no, sorry.
no, someone far more interesting, someone far more charismatic than Keir Starmer. We've got Dave's elder brother,
far more charismatic,
who moved to Antioch, Illinois, quite a few years ago now, and he's going to be sharing his tales with us. And we're hearing about the what it's like to be an Englishman abroad. So I'm looking forward to that, especially because he says he's bringing a bottle of Japanese whiskey with him.
Yeah, and that's the only reason. No, look, I'm looking forward to it. It's been a while since we've chatted. It's been a while since we sort of caught up and all that. So yeah, it'd be great to chat to him and see what his thoughts are on Chicago and Michigan and all of that. So it's my kind of town.
Indeed. Summing up for us, Dave. Leave us with one final thought.
One final thought. If you haven't voted yet, get your skates on. 40 minutes. Every vote counts. And look, whatever happens, we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to live with it. There's no point in getting all angry. There's no point in doing being a Ramona or an anti-Brexiter or whatever it is and just harping on and on and on and on about it. It makes no difference. If you're in Scotland and you're SNP, you lost the election, get over it. If Labour get in and you're Conservative, get over it. If you're a Labour voter and Conservative get in, well, I might laugh, but basically deal with it. Let's all collectively try and make the country a better place. Be nice to people. Treat people as humans. Do your best. Work hard. Don't be a work shy. Support the people that need help. And look, if we all do that, we'll have a great society, irrespective of who's in power.
Yeah. What if Farage gets in with riot? Gav?
I mean, I can't really add anything from what Dave said. It sounded like a Springer's final thought there. Be good to each other, or whatever he used to say. I can't.
Be good to yourself.
And each other. Yeah, and look, Dave's at the nail on it. Look, whichever party gets in, whatever your personal circumstances, and some people will benefit, some people won't. It's just about making the best of the situation and making the best of the hand that you dealt with. And if we can all do that, and we can all do it and try to do it in a way that doesn't negatively impact on others, then we're going to be in a better place. So yeah, I say can't really add much to what Dave said. I hit a nail on the head. Just be nice to each other and try to do things gracefully and with respect to each other.
Yeah, I'm just going to second what these two guys said, or technically third, I suppose, because two people have said it before me. So ultimately, yeah, be kind to each other. You know, we're all in this life together. We're on this planet a very, very short period of time. And let's just make the best of it while we can. And let's not focus on each other's differences. Let's just focus on what makes us all the same. Or if you do see other people's differences, let's celebrate them and let's just enjoy them. Now watch this drive.